Hi, everybody. Welcome in. I'm Josh, living life alcohol free. Today, we're talking about God, abuse, and alcoholism. So, I watched a movie last week, and maybe some of you have seen it. It just came out on Netflix recently, and it's called It Ends With Us. And it really resonated with me. There's a lot of things in there that happened in her childhood and going into adulthood that I really resonated with. I didn't necessarily have abuse growing up. There was verbal abuse and mental abuse, not so much physical, but those things that happened as a child, they played an important role in my growing up into my adulthood. Growing up with schoolmates of mine that would say insulting things or tease or make fun of, coupled with the verbal abuse and the mental abuse at home, kind of just left me in this feeling of self isolation. I ruminated on those things, I held them in, and it didn't help my self confidence. It didn't help me grow. And I wanted to have good self esteem. I really tried to gain that, but I didn't have the tools it took to get there. Without getting too in depth about that, I do want to just mention that I turned to alcohol at 15. And as soon as I drank alcohol, it kind of helped me quiet those voices of the people that were hurting me and those around me. It quieted my internal voice that was telling me that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't able to figure this out for myself. I wasn't able to do anything about it. My shortcomings. Drinking quieted that down. It was a few years prior to that where I found Jesus at a Christian camp that I went to, and it was just by happenstance. My neighbor, who was Christian, a churchgoer every Sunday, invited me to this camp, and I went and I found God at that camp. I go into more depth about that in my previous videos, but what happened was I was battling life with prayer and alcohol. So on one hand, the alcohol was quieting these internal struggles, but on the other hand, the prayer was helping me get through. So I was just left believing in God, but not knowing if He was really there or not, just praying and hoping. And then I came across a picture on Facebook that I ended up saving. I'll put it up here. This picture says a thousand things, but what it did say to me was that was me, this sensitive soul that's flammable, that's just ready to go up in flames. All it needs is a strike of that match. When I turned to alcohol, I basically struck that match on my own and lit myself on fire. Although I wasn't physically hurt, I mean, I was physically hurt. Alcohol does physically hurt you, but it was more of a mental thing, and it was more of I was just burning up my soul, burning up my spirit. I didn't even know it because when you're young, it feels good to drink. It feels good to party. It feels good to be with friends. It feels good to escape. If you're like me, it was you waited all week for the weekend so that you could get your drinks and you didn't have to worry about going to school the next day or whatever. So you live for the weekends. We all know where that leads to. It leads to more self-abuse, alcohol abuse, and ultimately just problems with alcoholism. When I quit drinking, I didn't quit for anybody but myself. I really spent decades thinking about quitting. It took me years to get to a point where it was like I've had enough, but I didn't quit for anybody else but myself. This picture reminded me of my daughter and how sensitive and how much she's like me. And being that I thought about me in that picture, but then I also thought about her. It ends with us. these two things kind of coincided last weekend with each other, this movie and this picture, and I kind of sat on it for all week. Had some weird dreams Sunday night. I made a video earlier this week, and I didn't get very many views, but that's okay. I'm not doing this for views. I'm just doing this to try to help people and help you guys, and maybe you resonate with some of the things that I'm going through. It made me think, I ended this cycle of abuse, of addiction, of the things that made me feel bad as a child. Quitting drinking, I ended that cycle. And as a result, those around me are going to have a better life. My wife, my daughters, and people around me at work, at church, and my friends, they all benefit from a better me, a better Josh. That's kind of where God plays this role. It's that I discovered as time went on in my sobriety is that God was there all along. I'm sober because God gave me the tools, and some people might call it the universe. Some people might have different religions, have a different higher power. Maybe they don't have a higher power, but my particular higher power is God, and God was always there, and it proved and it showed out when I quit drinking because I begged for him to get me out of that cycle, and he did. And as the years have gone on in my sobriety, and I've been able to grow in my faith, I realized at a certain point, a couple years into my sobriety, that I'm giving those around me the grace that God gives me on a daily basis. God doesn't give us all great things. He gives us he gives us. It could be good, it could be bad. I personally try to view all of it as just good because even if something bad happens, I can look at it rationally now as a non-drinker. I can look at the situation, break it down, and say, I'll get through this. I can get through this. I'm going to keep the faith. And when I get through it, I'm going to be stronger and I'm going to know something more about myself than I knew before. That's what this message is really about. It's really to testify that sobriety works, sobriety is better. Living life 100% alcohol free is freeing. God doesn't make things difficult for us just because the joke's on us. I used to think that the joke was always on me, and I was like this tiny little ant on earth just being burned or needled, especially when things didn't go my way. But a lot of times I was self-defeating. I would make these choices and make these rash decisions and rash movements, say things that I'd regret later. And it was all self inflicted. I had to work through those issues from my childhood, from my young adulthood into my adulthood, and come to terms with the fact that I'm grown now and it's really my responsibility to act as such. God helps me with that though. I can lean on him and know that no matter what happens, I can get through it. Sometimes I need to lean on God or walk with Jesus in a time of need, and he's there for me. And I don't have to live in these abusive situations anymore. It's freeing. So that's what I got for you today. I didn't know what I was going to exactly say here, but what I think I got to the point, which was just keep the faith. If you're getting sober and you want to stay sober, know that eventually you're going to replace your drinking with things that bring you joy. Maybe that's God, maybe that's another religion, maybe that's just coming to terms with that fact that the universe is, it's never going to be looking out for us. That's not what this was designed for. We have all these forces working against us on a daily basis, and we have to shield up. And that it goes for ourselves as well. We're built to self criticize, to tell ourselves that we're not good enough. We can't get through this. It takes practice and it takes work to get to a point where you can tell yourself that you can do this. When that happens, it's like a light switch goes off and you're like, yeah, I get it. I got this. But it was getting rid of the alcohol to begin with that really made that happen. And I'm talking like 100% alcohol free, no alcohol. And make it to 30 days, reassess, see where you're at. Maybe you're sober and you're struggling right now in your faith, or maybe you're just struggling in your life and you've been sober for 6 months or a year or 5 years. Maybe reflecting and reassessing where you're at, maybe that'll help. I personally haven't made a ton of these videos, but I felt like this one was important. I've got a sobriety group, Sobriety in the Storm. I'll pin the link below. It's a Facebook group. It's private, so anything that you have to say on there is kept right within that group. It'll just show up on your feed, not anybody else's. So whatever you say in there is just strictly confidential. I find that it helps to have sober communities, to have faithful communities, to have different outlets and different avenues to help you work through whatever it is you're going through with your faith, your sobriety, your life. We can all relate for the most part if it has to do with alcohol and not wanting to drink, and faith and wanting to grow in your faith. And life is stressful, especially this time of year. You got the holidays coming up. So those of you that celebrate, Merry Christmas. And I hope your 2025 is awesome. And hope to see you over at the Facebook group. Well, have a great sober day, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.